Hello everyone. So this is a new series that I'm going to start regarding C++. So this series serves both two purposes. First one is if you are planning to face an interview, especially in game development that involves C++. If you have a C++ component, I'm going to answer all the common questions that you would be most likely to ask in a programming interview. And also if you use C++ in everyday basis in your job, even though if you ask with these questions, you may have sometimes a hard time explaining some concepts or answering them, even though you are familiar with the language. So in that case also, if you watch this, it would be helpful for you. And also if you are a complete beginner, I'm gonna make this series easier to follow so that you will get a good understanding and it will help you to learn C++ as well. Alright, so let's get started. So here I'm going to focus on classes and object, and before that the projects that you already know that define C++. So this could be the first question that you might get, and this is not going to be completely on slides. I'm gonna create a project and do some coding as well and explain all of the questions with the examples, with the codes as well. Right, so first one, for this we don't need a code, so define C++. When you answer this question, it can have multiple parts in your answer, like this. C++ is, this is not complete, but it's actually, there are many answers to this. So it is statically typed general purpose language, and also we can say it is a superset of C, because C++ has additional features and double OP support. Okay, let's go through each of these statements. Statically typed means when you define a variable with a data type that is constant throughout the program. So that means if you define a data type or a variable, let's say like integer a, then a is going to be an integer throughout the program in that scope, unless you have defined something called with the name e in a different scope. But whatever you define, it is going to remain constant. This might be there are programming languages that has dynamic types as well. For example, JavaScript, we can define variables such as var a, and then you can assign different types of values to a. So like it could be integers, it could be strings, things like that. But C++ is not like that. And the next point is general purpose. What does that mean? So general purpose means C++ is not intended for just one domain. It can be applied in various different domains. It could, let's say, game development, other application development, some low level stuff. Actually there is a broad spectrum of things that we can do with C++. What is the opposite of general purpose means that language is specifically defined for only one domain. For example, we can take blueprints in Unreal Engine. So we can't use blueprint anywhere else, only in the Unreal Engine. So that's a specific language. C++ is not, it's general purpose. Okay, and the next part, superset of C. That means the language C does not have double OP support. Double OP stands for object oriented programming, and I'm not going to get into details about double OP here. And other than that, C++ have some additional features, let's say functions, variables, libraries that are not included in C. Alright, now let's move on to the next question. Here we will need to do some coding as well to explain. Right, define classes and objects. Alright, let's first consider classes. A class is a blueprint or a design of an entity that defines the attributes and actions, the attributes that it can have and the actions it can perform. So in this answer, I tried to avoid use the programming jargon because I want it to appear like a more general explanation. But in the computer programming, attributes usually means variables and actions usually means functions or methods, because actions can perform stuff, do stuff. That's what functions and methods do, and attributes are just like characteristics or variables. In this example, I have given you a name, a character, a class, called character. So in the character class, we can have attributes in the top part, name and age. So these are attributes or variables. And after that, we can have actions it can perform, so functions or methods. So this one is a special type of a function. We call it a constructor. We will get into the detail later. So usually a constructor contains the same name as the class name with these parentheses, brackets, and show name. This we can think of this as a function that we can call to print the name of this character into the console or whatever the output, or we can just play a sound clip that say the name if it is a game. Alright, so next question. No, before going to next question, let's create an example class in C++. So this is Visual Studio 2019. I'm gonna create a new project. I'll use a console application. This just usually types a hello world into the console. Let's create this. I'll name this CPP interview. CPP interview and create. Okay, this is what we get. Here you can play your program, and this is what you get, hello world. So this one prints hello worlds into the console. Okay, to create a class, right click on the source files, add class. I'll name this one just like our example in the slides, character, and create. Right, now when you create a class, you will get two things. First one, character CPP. This file will be added to your source files, and under header file you will have character.h. So this header file usually contains the declaration of the class. So that means the function, usually just the names, and the variables that will be used throughout the class. But we use, if the variables are used only inside functions, they might not go in the header file, but we will look into those details later. Name variable std string name, and here we can't use a string without using hash include string. And also what else? Okay, that's it. And yeah, and what else we have here? Okay, age could be an integer, int age. Right, so when we define a variable, we have to define a variable or a function. We have to define the access modifier as well. That means what is the scope that this variable or function can be accessed. So I'll make this private. So by making it private, we will only be able to access this name and age only within this class. So there are other access modifiers such as public and protected. We will talk, I will explain in detail later. So for now, I'll make this private, and then I'll define public access modifier, and under this I'll add a constructor. That means this one. So a constructor usually defines when we create an object of this data of this class, what should be the default value of its characteristics or attributes. Okay, and one more thing here, std ::. So this std means the namespace that this string is defined in. You could either use this as well instead of typing like this, but that is considered a bad practice, using namespace std. If you put a line like this, you don't have to put std : before using any of the data types that is defined in the std namespace. But this is considered a bad practice because this have some consequences that I'm not going to explain here. Let's look into them later on. So I'll just go with this. Okay, and here character. So default constructor usually don't take any arguments, but here std string name. So when you initialize a character, when you create an object, you can give the name of that object of this class. So when I do that, I get an option to create definition of character in character.cpp. So here this is the header file, and in the header file we only put declarations. So we have to do the actual implementation of this constructor that we put here in the source file of the character. So let's create that. So if I do that, I get a pop-up like this, but I'll just open the character.cpp. Now that I have that constructor I just created here. So here I'll initialize this name variable that we have with the argument value we get. So this dot name equals name. The reason I have used this here, because this argument name also name and the variable name also name. So to avoid that confusion, I use this. So that specifically refers to the name variable that we have in this class. You don't have to do that if you have something like n instead of the name as the parameter name, but I wanted to make it clear, so I use the name. Okay, and now I'll add this showName function. This also should be public because we need to call that function from outside this class. So void, because all the functions need to have a return type other than the constructor. showName. Okay, and when I do that, I get the option to create definition of showName in the character.cpp. Let me just directly go here. So here all I want to do is print in the name of the character into the console. So for that I can use this std colon cout std cout. Before that I'll put character name and then name, and after that I also need to add a end line, add a new line. For that we can use std and okay, let's just put here, and we need to import some libraries. Sorry, not count, just cout. And in order to use cout, we have to use IO stream header, and then and L. Sorry, std and L. Okay. Right, do we have anything? No. Okay, so now we have our basic class with two private variables, and a constructor and a function. Right, now let's we have the class. So this is the class, but in order to use this class we have to create an object from this class, and that brings us to our next slide, which is the next question: define classes and object. So object, an instance of a class. So a class only defines what an instance of it can do and what it contains, but to actually use that class we need to have an object of this class. So only if we have an object of that class we can use the class features. So there is something called static classes that is a special type of a class that we can use without specifically creating an object, but just know there is something called that, and I'm gonna ignore that for now and go ahead with this one. Right, so let's create an object from this character class. So here character player, and I'll call it C player. C stands for character and player, so player character. And here we get this option to include character.h. So yeah, we have to use this, we have to include this header file we have created in order to use that class. Okay, and here we have an error: no default constructor exists for the class character. And before explaining that, so here you can see IO stream is included within these marks, but character.h is included under these marks. So usually this notation is used for built-in libraries, and these are used for the header files that we create. Right, so here what it says is this is the constructor we have, and for this constructor we need to give a parameter value for the name. So here I'll add a parameter. I'll call this one player. The name is player. Okay, now the error is gone, so we don't have any compile errors. So if we want to show the name of the player, we can call cPlayer.showName. Okay, and if I play, you get the output hello world, which comes from the first line. Character name is player. So right, this is the intended output. And if we need to have another class, another object from the same character class, CNPC, an NPC character, So I'll give the name npc and cnpc dot show name. So it should print both character name player, character name npc. Alright, so this C player, CNPC, these are objects, actually these are references to the objects of the class character. And let's see, so if I want to access this name or age directly here, C player dot, when I press dot, I only get show name. That's because this show name is the only public member that we have in this character. Member means attributes and functions. These two, name and the age, is private. So therefore from outside the class we can't access them. But if I put, let's say, age into the public category, I should be able to access it. See, now age is there. So those are called access modifiers. There are three types: private, protected and public. So now you understand private and public, but in order to understand protected, you will need to have a child class or a derived class, but I'm not going to do that here. I will look into that in the next episode, and I'm gonna stop this episode here. And thanks for watching. So as always, all the project files are relevant to this episode and everything will be available in the Patreon page. And if you like to support my work, you can get the membership of the Patreon club. And see you in another episode. Goodbye.